We call this PowerPoint karaoke. This is something that has been happening at conferences recently, though usually it's more simply done as humor and not as Audrey. So we're going to roll the dice. On the 1st of April, well, I realized I was going to Japan tomorrow. And I had 2 talks to give at YAPC Asia. And, well, I wasn't really prepared yet. And I panicked. I had no slides. But that's kind of what happens. I always prepare my slides just in time. In fact, I've given keynotes where I prepared half of the slides before the break and the other half during the break. But I had a dilemma here. I had 2 sets of slides I needed to do. They were essentially 2 talks. Which one should I do first? Should I do my Gifty talk, or should I do my Perl 6 talk? Well, Jesse built this piece of software called Docsori, doxory.com. And it's basically a way to let the internet run your life. You go to the website, doxory.com, and you put in questions. In this case, which slide should I work on? Should I work on my Gifty slides, or should I work on my Perl 6 slides? Don't know. Anyway, I typed in the 2, and I clicked. And then I waited, because my friends were going to tell me what to do. But I felt much better, because now I had nothing to do, and I could relax. Well, the thing about Docsori is that it's a tool that lets you help other people run their lives. So I could do that for some other folks. So I started looking at questions. This is the first one I got. I need to earn some money. I could become a Python hacker, or I could become a PHP hacker. I don't actually know this J. Davies Coates, but I'll give him an answer. It's not really a good choice. In fact, it's a false dilemma. There's always a third option. In this case, you should hack Jifty. So I told him what to do, and I clicked that not quite well-named button. Jesse's promised me he'll fix it soon. And I hit save. And I got this. It told me that 60 people had said Plone, and 23 people had said Drupal, and there was a little details button at the bottom. And I hit the details button, and it did an Ajax in place expand, and showed me who picked what. And if I scroll my page down, I would get to see the other comments. So some obnoxious Ruby hacker said, oh, you should learn Ruby instead. And you see my answer there. But anyway, now I could take a nap. So after an hour, I got a decision. People said I should hack on my Gifty slides and not my Perl 6 slides. So now it's time to hack on Gifty slides. So if people don't know, Gifty is a web framework. It's designed to make easy things easy. It's even designed to make impossible things easy. So when Jesse named Gifty, in fact, he'd first named the framework JFDI, which stands for Just Do It. Now, of course, Jesse had previously named a product RTFM, the RT-FAC manager, and learned that large corporations don't like names with the word fuck in them. So he decided to call it Gifty instead. So but it's a framework designed to let you JFDI, to let you get stuff done. So we're going to build an application as our demo for this. And since we saw Docsori earlier, let's build Docsori. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use cpan to install Gifty. You see that no test there. Jesse does not recommend this, but I do it all the time because I like to live dangerously. So anyway, if you skip tests, it installs much faster. But Jesse won't help you if it breaks. So anyway, after that, we've got a Gifty command. So we're going to create a new Gifty application. This is going to go create all of our scaffolding and our skeleton. Lots of stuff. And create a config file. So all those directories, but only 3 files. bin Gifty, the config file, and a makefile PL. All of those are optional. And you have a fully functional Gifty application. And it runs. You get this. You get the sort of skeleton of the application, online docs, an admin console, and a pony. The reason you get a pony is that when we, when we were building Jifty, we asked developers, well, what do you want in a web framework? Oh, well, I don't ever want to manage my SQL schema again. I never want to have anything to do with databases. I want continuation, so I get GoSub on the web. I want a magic REST UI for anything I create. And basically what they were saying is this sort of old, I don't know if it's British or an American expression, Daddy, can I have a pony for Christmas? They wanted something very unreasonable. Is there a reasonable Japanese translation of that kind of? I know of. Okay. So anyway, they were basically saying, I want a pony. So when you start up a Jifty application, you get a pony. But Doxori has users. Doxori is a multi-user application. So not so hot just yet. So we're going to go into our Doxori directory, and we're going to create a model class, Jifty model name user. And it writes two files. It writes a test file and a model class. We're going to go edit the model class to go put in some fields. So now we get, if you were in Jesse's talk this morning where he talked about Jifty, about the domain-specific languages we use in Jifty, you would recognize this. This is the skeleton of a Jifty schema declaration. So we're going to add a couple of columns to our record object. So we've got a name and we've got an email. And so the name, it's got a label, it's got hints. We note that it's distinct, that it's mandatory. You can't have users without names. Same thing for email addresses. So one of the interesting things about Jifty is our data model doesn't just inform the database, it also informs the view layer. It sets sensible defaults so that you can automatically render bits of the view. So now we're going to run the Jifty schema tool, which is going to look inside your application and figure out what your model classes look like. And it's going to then create all the SQL you need. And so it does this. It looks inside our Doxori model user, and Jifty's built-in internal AJAX session handling designed for AJAX applications, database internal metadata, and says, oh, hey, there's nothing here yet. I don't know what version of Jifty. There's no version of Jifty and no version of the application. It stores that data in the database. And now you're good to go. You can start up the Jifty server. Tells you can connect. Starts with a little standalone web server that's pure Perl. And though you can also run under FastCGI or Mod Perl 2, works with Apache, works with Lady. But this is really great for development. It's quick, it's easy, you don't need to install something else. It defaults to SQLite, but could also run with MySQL and Postgres. Oracle support requires just a little bit of tweaking. But anyway, now you've got a Jifty application. Let's go look in the admin UI. So it's ugly as sin, but we've got our one model and some Jifty actions, and we'll talk about those if we have enough time later. So anyway, I'm going to click in, and hey, we've got our users, and we're going to go create a new user record. So user Audrey with the password of audreyt@audreyt.org. That's me. I'm going to hit create. And hey, we've created the record. Edit and delete, both will do what it sounds like. If you have an AJAX-capable browser, they'll do it on the fly inline. So it'll just actually click that button. It will pop up and replace the section of the page with an edit widget. If you don't have an AJAX-capable browser, Jifty will actually reload the page and do the replacement on the server rather than on the client. So anyway, we're going to go edit that, and I'm going to capitalize my name. And then we're going to hit save, and we're done. So now that we have users in our application, we want to make some choices. Because what good is an application that makes choices for you if it doesn't let you make choices? So we're going to create a new model class. This one is called choice. Does the same things as before. We're going to go edit our choice. So when you saw before, Doxori had a fill in the choice, fill in an X, a left side, and the Y, the right side, which internally we call A and B out of this weird, perverse sense of humor. And we store who it's being asked by. And so the interesting things here are that we've specified that we want to render these three big things as text areas, and that for asked by, at runtime we want to figure out who the current user is and stash that as the column attribute, and that actually references a user object in the database. So this is going to create a choice schema that has name, A, B, and asked by. And so we update our database, and now we have, in the admin UI, I need help deciding on one hand, on the other hand, and because we said that this references a Doxorian model user, it defaults to a drop-down of all user objects. Clearly, when you get to a really, when you are operating at scale, you're going to need a smarter admin UI that doesn't give you 50,000 users in a drop-down. But anyway, we're going to go create a choice. So type some stuff in. Text editor is always a good debate. Which one should I be using? I don't know. So anyway, done. But now we've only got one user in here. And so how are we going to get the user to sign in? So Jifty actually comes with plugins to handle users' authentication, email verification of users' email addresses, things like that. So we're going to go poke in the Jifty config file, and we're going to see that there's a set of default plugins. The Pony application, a REST API, Halos, which I'll talk about later, default templates for internal server errors. We transparently compress and cache CSS and JavaScript on the fly so that what gets served out to the users is, rather than 50 CSS files and 30 JavaScript files, because you're doing things in a nice modular fashion, you get one CSS file and one JavaScript file, and rather than them being about 300K of uncompressed text, it's gzipped on the fly, and it gets 5, 6K. It's much more palatable. But anyway, those are the defaults. And we're going to add a new one. We're going to add authentication password. And we're going to say that for now, we don't actually want to do any access control because we haven't written any access control routines. We just want to give the users a little bit of room. Don't do that in production. So anyway, we're going to go back to our user class. We need to mix in the authentication information. So we're going to say we're going to use the user model mixin and the authentication password mixin. So this is going to give us things like email address, hashed password, whether their email address has been verified, all that good stuff. So anyway, I'm going to go re-update the database and back into the admin UI. Or sorry, back in, and we're going to click sign up, which has now appeared in the menus. Sign up defaults to a very simple form that asks for their nickname, their email address, their password, and their password again. They hit sign up, and Jifty will send them off email saying, hey, come on, come play. So Doxori, this is sort of the bare bones default mail message. All this stuff can get customized. But it sends them a URL that has an authentication token that they have to click on that will perform an update in Jifty that will say, hey, we know who you are and you actually got this mail. So they do that. And then they click login. Login, you can fill in Jesse fills in his email address and his password. You can choose, the user can choose whether to have his cookie have a cookie that is sticky across browser sessions. And he hits login, and it says, nice, welcome back. But there's no UI. We have a data model, and we have an admin UI, but not particularly useful. So here we are with the Doxori dispatcher. The dispatcher maps all of your URLs to your views. It basically gives you a place to hang bits of logic that should run before your view gets displayed. So in your dispatcher, you're going to start with two lines that say your application class dispatcher, and it's going to use the Jifty base dispatcher as its superclass. And so we're going to say, before we do anything at all, we want to check to see if the user's logged in. And if they are, we're going to give them a link to choices. And that's that. And if they're not trying to get to the login page or the sign-up page, we're going to push them over with a tangent to the login or sign-up pages. This is Jifty's continuation system, which basically gives you GoSub. So most hyperlinks and most redirects on the web are go-to. You get somewhere and you don't know where you came from, and you can't get back. With tangent rather than redirect, you can actually call return later and get pushed back to where you came from with all the state that you had when you got there. And then we're going to, there are a couple of rules we're going to drop in a couple of, these are implicit. So what happens is if there's no Jifty dispatcher rule for a given URL, we're just going to show the template that has that path. So you can start with your designers working like a regular website. You can say, under /about/company.html. Here's a page that's our company's blah, 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 blah. Here are our directors. Here are photographs of them. And as you want to add logic, you can. But by default, if there's nothing else, it just falls through to displaying these pages. So anyway, we're going to go back to the web UI, and we're going to try to get to the front page. And now that we have actually gone and defined a dispatcher, but don't have any interesting view classes, we're going to get this 404. You tried to get somewhere, and now you can't get there. So we should probably go and build that front page view. So we're going to go, and we're going to edit doc_story view. This is using template declare, which Jesse showed you this morning. It's not template toolkit 2. It's not Mason. It's pure Perl. Everything is code because you're coders. So start off again. You're going to use the Jifty view declare base, and we're going to define a template for the front page. It's going to have the page wrapper around it and an H1 that says ask a question, because that's what we want people to do when they get to the website. And then we're going to show them the make choice template, which we haven't defined yet. So we're going to go and create a new template called, unsurprisingly, make choice. You'll see this is a private template. Private templates can't get called directly from the web. They can only get called from other templates. This allows you to build up little UI components that you don't necessarily want to let end users call directly, but that you might want to use from within your own application. So the new choice component, it's a div that contains a form. We're going to create a new Jifty action called create choice. For any Jifty model, we automatically create actions for create, read, update, and delete. So you can think of create choice essentially as a function that will create a new choice record, and as its arguments takes all of the attributes of a choice. So we're going to create one of these actions, and then we're just going to we're going to render it. We're going to render only these fields. And then we're going to call a submit button that says ask the crowd. People mostly with me? Okay. And we click the button, and we reload the page, and now we get this. So what this has done is this has actually gone and introspected the model class to see what label we want for each of these things, what kind of field that we want to render them as. In this case, all of them are rendered as text areas. And of course, now we can ask our question in a slightly more civilized manner. So we fill out our question, and we don't care about answers. We're just going to ask the question. We're going to hit ask the crowd, and boom. In fact, as soon as you hit that, it does either a full round trip if you don't have Ajax enabled, or it does an Ajax check on each of the fields, and it shows up some errors. It says, hey, you need to fill in this field, and hey, you need to fill in that field. Because when we defined our column A and our column B, we said that they're mandatory. And the model basically can inform the view as well as the database. So the view knows that, oh, hey, I shouldn't let the user fill in one of these forms without filling in the action. So now that now we're going to go fill them in, and we're going to hit submit, and now everything's happy, and it says, hey, I created it. So now let's go fill in that choices view. So we're going to go back, and you remember we already had the template for slash, and the template for new choice. But now we're going to add a template for choices. So again, it's a page. And the first thing says my choices at the top. Now we're going to create a list. And in that list, we're going to get a collection of choices. So this is a currently empty collection of doc_story choice objects. And we're going to limit it down to things that were asked by the current user. So that basically says we're going to create a search. Basically, we're going to do this. This turns into SQL on the back end that says select star from choices where asked by is equal to the current user. And then we're going to loop through it. We've got an iterator. And we're going to print the name of the choice, and then in parentheses, the name of the person who asked it. And because we said that that references a user object, it automatically does a lookup. So you can just dereference all the way down. And then we're going to print A versus B. And so this is more template declare. We've got functions for every HTML tag. So you can basically say, here is the term in our definition list, here's the definition. We want to bold the choice A. We want to emphasize the verse, which other one, and bold the choice B again. And now we close our parentheses. And so we go and look at the page. And we got a list of which ones has Jesse put up there. So now we can ask people questions, but nobody can vote on it. So we're going to add some votes. Unsurprisingly, we're going to run Jifty model vote. And again, it just creates two files. We're going to go edit our vote file. And we're going to go in and we're going to say choice is a reference to one of those choice objects. And voter is a reference to a user. And each voter can make a suggestion. And they could potentially put in comments like, no, you jerk, you really want to be using TextMate. Everyone uses TextMate. It's Web 2.0 enabled. So anyway, we do that. Again, we update our database. And we go back, and now we're back in the admin UI. And so we go and create a new vote record. And because we say those things are references, they've become drop-downs in the default render. We can go and answer the question. Audrey's going to not vote on Jesse's choice of text editors. I know better than to get myself into flame wars. So create, and hey, we've got the record. So we should probably implement a way for end users, for other people to vote on things. So again, we're going to go into our dispatcher, and we're going to go and add a new entry to the nav at the top. If I'm logged in, I want to have a link to pick things. I want to be able to make choices. And I do want to be able to see the choices that I've asked. And again, back with the, if someone isn't logged in, force them to log in. So more dispatcher. So when someone calls pick, this is a whole bunch of stuff that basically says, I want to find all the choices that I haven't voted on yet, that are still up for voting. So we're going to do a joins. The join syntax isn't stellar. Jesse keeps promising he'll fix it. But basically what we're doing is we are joining two tables to figure out what choices are out there that I haven't cast a vote on. If there's any result at all, we're going to stash that away in the stash. We're going to store that as the choice that we want to display on the page. Otherwise, we're going to show a whole different page instead. We're going to say, show me nothing to pick. So back into the view, we've already defined the how bizarre, that should say slash, the slash page, the choices, and here's pick. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull the choice out of the stash, and then we're going to again create a new action. This is a create vote action. And we're going to add a redirect so that after we're done, we're going to redirect back to pick, and it will find the next one, and so on and so forth. And here are some args that we're going to pass into our buttons: what choice, who the voter is. And then we're going to display an H1 of who asked it and what the choice content was. And then we're going to build a form, and we're going to put buttons in it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, for each of A and B, we're going to create buttons that have two actions on them. One, we're going to create a vote, and two, we're going to redirect off somewhere else. They're going to get labeled with the current, that code looks funny. But I've been sick in bed, and so I may have made a typo. I'm not sure that should say choice. Oh, no, that should. So that basically says the choice A or choice B. So we're going to have an A button and a B button. And because we want to make sure that people don't get too screwed by someone sitting there and hitting the button on the left all the time, every time the page gets displayed, the left and right get randomized. So we're going to display these two buttons, and then we're going to display, and we're actually going to print them out here. Should I click on the first button, the second button, or something else? None of the above. And then I'm going to render that one other form field for comments. So we're going to go into view. What are we doing here? I have no idea. So, In fact, the nothing to pick page that we talked about before. If for some reason there aren't any comments that you need to fill in, we're going to go and give you a nice bit of text saying, hey, you don't have to vote. None of your friends are so screwed up as to put their lives on the internet for voting. But maybe you want to ask a question. And so we're going to reuse that new choice component. And so now we get something that looks like this. So we get to see Jesse's choice. Should I pick Emacs, or should I pick Vim, or should I pick something else, and fill in some commentary. And so if I reload, it jumps back and forth randomly. But I'm going to pick Vim. And so I pick Vim, and it defaults to saying created. You can, of course, override all these things. And it says, oh, there's nothing else you should pick. Audrey, maybe you need some help making some choices. What do you want to do? So now we need to actually be able to see that choices page that will show me current tallies. So we're going to go back to our choice model, and we're going to create a subroutine called in favor of that basically says, show me how many votes there are for a given choice, for A or for B. And so we create in favor of A and in favor of B. And these do those nice simple SQL queries that count things in the database. What am I doing now? So we're going to go back to the choices template. And so we're going to loop through. And now we're not just going to print A and B. We're also going to say choice A and choice in favor of A count. So every search in the database can either, you can call an iterator and get next, 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 or you can call count and get the total value out of it. Right then. And now we get to go see what this looks like. So we're going to go to My Choices, and we're going to see that, hey, it registered one vote. And of course, adding comments is about the same thing. And that's it. That's all it takes to build a web application. That was 5 files. We have our model classes, the 3 of them. We've got the dispatcher, and we've got the view class. And we're done. Well, we're mostly done. We've got a new US law we've got to deal with, banning profanity, because children might see something on the internet. So we're going to have to censor doxori. We're going to go back to the code and go play with our choice model. So we're going to say, there's this profanity module that only detects American profanity. It's very useful. So we're going to go and validate that choice name. So we've created a new subroutine called validate name in the choice that takes as a single argument the value of the choice. And we're going to say, if it appears to be profane, we're going to return failure and a message telling the user, hey, don't do that. Otherwise, we're going to return true. So now we go back and start typing, asking a question. And as soon as we tab out of the field, Gifty knows that there was a validate method there, and will automatically do an AJAX call back to the server. It posts a little bit of JSON back saying, here are the values that someone's filled in. Will you validate them for me? And it gets back that error message. And so you immediately see this right here. Of course, if you don't have an AJAX-enabled browser, the same thing happens on form post, and it gets included on the fly. So the validator, it's not so hot. It means that if people see that, they're just going to stop asking their question. So rather than that, why don't we just get rid of the profanity for them? So we're going to create a new thing. Rather than validate name, it's canonicalize name. And what this means is that on the fly, we're going to change this. So what we do is we get the value back, and we do a replacement, and we return the new value. So now you get this instead. Just as soon as you tab out, it corrects you. What this turns out to be useful for in real life is things like if someone types in a date, we parse it, and we give them back a possible value. So we've got autocompleters that work exactly the same way. And the nice thing is that because this stuff is right in your model class, it applies no matter whether you're coming in through the web or using the API directly. It's all in one clean place. What time do I run until? OK. So Jifty comes with a bunch of development tools. The nice standalone web server that means you don't have to install Apache on your laptop to start playing around. Everything uses module install by default, so it can easily include your dependencies and make it easy for users to install them. There's a par distribution target, so you can bundle up a par of all of your dependencies. Comes with something called halos. which come from a web framework called Seaside, which is written in Smalltalk. So it gives you things like view tracing. So you can, in fact, see all of the templates that were called as your page rendered, see how long each one took to render. You can edit them on the fly. In fact, if you click that edit button, it'll bring you up a web-based editor to change it. And when you hit save, Jifty will call a continuation and re-render the original page exactly as if you'd had it different the first time around. Halos also give you things like SQL logging. So even though Jifty is taking care of generating the SQL for you, having a computer generate SQL is never as ideal as one might hope it would be. Things don't always work right. Sometimes it does very heavy SQL queries. So this will actually show you all of the SQL queries that were rendered by component. It'll show you how long they took to run. It'll show you template profiling information. It'll show you what templates this template called. It's a really neat way to get a visual, to get used to working with a new application. As you go into an app, you can see, oh, well, this is how this is built, and this is how that is built. You don't have to actually go code diving. As you're browsing, you can see this stuff. In devel mode, so templating systems generally have a way to refresh on the fly. Every time you make a change, you hit save, and the next time someone does a page load, the templates reload. We've done the same thing for Perl code. So every time you make a change to your library, the next HTTP hit, it automatically loads. This is only in developer mode. Log for Perl tracing, you've seen the admin console. When you go to deploy, of course it works with Lighty. We have a built-in fast static content server. It's nowhere near as sexy as Perl but for a large class of applications, it's a huge improvement. If you're serving out images or text or CSS or JavaScript, it can on the fly mark them as cache this forever. It can gzip it if the browser supports gzip. Though for CSS and JavaScript, we actually go far further. We can compile all of your CSS files to one CSS file that is exactly as the browser would compile it. So anywhere that there's an include line, the new CSS gets stuck in right there. We gzip it on the fly, and we serve it out as named as a MD5 of the content. So that means that when your content gets served out, if you change the CSS, it doesn't matter that you've told the user to cache it forever. They now get told to cache something else. We do the same thing for JavaScript. We find that the gzipping and the transparent inclusion actually are a lot better than all of the various, well, let's try to strip the comments out. Stripping comments out saves you about 10% usually. This saves you over 90%. Let's see. It's fully internationalized. We have support for client-side sessions. So you, in fact, don't even have to store your sessions in the database. If you want to, you can force the sessions onto the client in cookies that are cryptographically signed. I use this for some of my client apps, though Jesse is terrified of it and thinks that no one should ever be using it in production. Also, the regular session library is optimized for Ajax. It allows you to do key level lookups and stores rather than having to serialize and deserialize a whole user session, which is really useful when you're doing lots of tiny little Ajax hits. We have support. We have a pub sub system that allows you to do events and subscriptions. If I had more time, I'd show you a web-based chat system that took 15 minutes to write and is less than 50 lines of code and template all told. Okay, I'm trying to go as fast as I can, but almost done. By default, we do single process in-memory caching of database queries, though it's a single configuration file line change to say use memcache instead. Memcache is a huge performance improvement if Brad's talk didn't actually already clue you into that. Talked about that. We've been playing with a wiki-style UI editor. Wikis are really great for prototyping applications. Why should you be using a wiki and then transforming it into code? So what it does is, rather than throwing an error if you don't have a template, it throws you a text area. Every component gets an edit widget that does an Ajax in place switch to to a text area. It means that you can prototype apps in mere minutes. We are working to cut down the amount of code you need. Jifty music videos. Everyone else has screencasts. We need something a little sexier. So Wifty is a wiki written in Jifty. CommitBit is the tool I use to manage Perl 6 commit bits. It basically does access control for Subversion repositories. It does sign-in email verification and can write out all of the authentication and authorization files that Subversion needs for WebDAV or HTTP. SealCow is going to be talking about Babelbee, a web-based translation application, later today. There are ping, chat, and clock demos. Can install Jifty from CPAN, from Subversion, by going to jifty.org. You want to look in the tutorial, join us on Freenode, mailing list, and of course that demo app, if you want to grab the source, it's available there. And that's it. Thank you. Dear God. Right then.
まあ質問一つ二つなら we have time for maybe one or two questions. Come on, I know you're dying.
I was wondering how you dealt with escaping inside views. Like I saw on one of those things you were calling the name or choice method on something inside of an H1.
It transparently
Okay,
escapes by default.
Okay. If you're inside of a HTML code block after.
If you're anything where it is going to anything where it's going to automatically put a string into the output buffer, it defaults to HTML escaping, and it actually takes a little bit of work to turn it off.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
In 30 seconds or less, please explain how your continuations work.
Trying to get there. These are all the bonus slides. 30 seconds don't start till I get to the slide. Jesus.
まあ5分間ぐらい休憩に入っております
Is there
の
another
で、
question I can answer while I'm
上でまた面白いセッションもありますし、次もこちら面白いんですね。でやっと見つかりましたんで、聞きたい方はぜひ残ってください。
So people ask us this: continuations in Perl? Well, they're not full continuations. We call them delimited continuations. Jesse used to refer to them as fake continuations because real ones serialize everything: standard in, standard out, your environment, the phase of the moon. So what we serialize is the application state, where you came from, what your HTTP args were, what the previous continuation was, and that's all you need to do continuations within the web context. The web's built on GoTo. Nobody likes GoTo. Continuations are GoSub. They're much more civilized. Yeah. Did that?